Okay, so we're going to do this video on the 5 bridges of Wing Chun. And I realize that not everybody does this. Some people really pretty much work on 2 bridges. That's okay. We're not saying that way is wrong. We do 5 bridges because we want to have a little bit more reality in the motion. So the first bridge, very simple here, means that we have attained a bridge. This is called a training bridge. And most of Wing Chun is practiced from here in classroom situation. And so this is, there's no threat here. There's no force, left or right or forward or back. We're seeding this contact. This is a bridge. Okay, from the bridge, now we begin our exercises. So this video is about the bridges, not the training after, but we'll demonstrate, of course, a couple things so you understand why we're doing this. So the first bridge I practice is lop. So I lops out and da. And I come back. So right here, I'm just kind of standing here, he's standing there, and I lops out and da. I want to bring the elbow down and bring the fist in, and I bring my elbow to my hip. I don't really try to punch over, and I don't pull this, right? I lop and da. If he stopped my hand, I jop and da. That can be considered stage 1 and stage 2 trapping from the training bridge, okay? Another thing I can do from this training bridge is pox out. So when I pox out and sots out, he allows me to execute that. That's why it's called training. Then maybe he stops me and I lops out and sots out, okay? Or I pak da and he stops me and I loy da. We did that in the video on trapping. And he poks out and then I sots out from the sub-sow side. And I can enter this from jing jern, from lop da, lop sot, and lop jern. We covered all that in that video. But it's important to understand this bridge you're using here is so that you can focus on this part. And you don't really have to worry about how did I get here. So what this is isolation exercise. Don't believe any fight is going to take place like this. And this causes problems for a lot of us when we go to take our Wing Chun to combat phase, is that we assume that the opponent will accept to make a bridge with me. When in reality, he probably doesn't even know he's supposed to. So you're going to have an awful hard time getting someone to do this. So that's why we call it training bridge, and it's only for training. Okay, the next bridge we call is the active bridge. And this really, you see a lot of Bruce Lee's stuff. He really utilizes this, this bilji or bil sao as an entry to try to force the opponent to put his hand up. And this is important because if you don't execute it this way, it's going to be extremely difficult to make it work. Even done correctly, it can be difficult to make the person want to bridge in this day and age. In the 70s, different. But as Doc is here, so he's now here perhaps in his fighting posture, or maybe not. When I see that, I create myself a little bit of angle. I don't want to bridge here because he's going to just punch me out, even if he's a Wing Chun guy. So I want to kind of create a little bit of an angle so that I'm not face to face, that we're more on this angle, like in the dummy form. When I make my attack, I move in and I make the Q sound. So that looks like for that long. It looks like the training bridge. And then my what? My bridge rocks his core. Now what he does in response to that, you know, is another video. But is how I determine whether I pull or push. And I say that loosely. It doesn't mean pull or push. But if he reacts to that active bridge by resisting towards me, perfect to lop. That's what lop is really good right there. Now if he kind of responds like that, see, that's perfect to what? Pak. You see? If he takes a step back, see, then I kick him. That's why you got to have kicking. That's why Bruce Lee modified your base Wing Chun, but you don't need to modify it. But if I make that attempt here, and he remains stiff, I can pak and then enter my trapping, okay? So sometimes they might move towards you, sometimes they move away from you, and that's a whole nother video discussing that active bridge. For our purpose here, what we want is the intent. In other words, my first bridge, we agreed to do passively, okay? My second bridge, I created by forcing him to stop me from poking him in the eye. So that motion intends to strike the eye. Don't move. And it might be just like that. See, I'm not really going bilgy, right? But I just strike at his eye. It might be vertical. It might be horizontal. If he responds to that, my vertical turns into a horizontal. See that? My horizontal will turn what? If I bridge, it turns more what? To like juts out. But I start to what? Penetrate. I want to shock his core before I initiate any kind of control technique or trapping technique. So once I've shocked his core, that's our base. I paksat and loisat, right? Or I lop and jop and strike. And there are many techniques on that which you saw in the other video, okay? So anytime he attacks me and I react here, see, he could what? Pock me easy. If he attacks me and I react here, he lops me in. It pulls me in. It doesn't really give me a good chance to respond like that. So when he thrusts me and I defend, that's the active bridge. Now he would trap here and follow up. However I respond, he will follow up. And there are too many of those to discuss on this video. If he attacks me and I lean away, he has to decide, will he kick front or rear leg, or will he pursue me, which I don't advise, without fire, because he's going to take you down. So our active bridge means that we call it force a bridge. And I wrote that in the book. When we wrote the book, we talked about we force the opponent to defend. That is that initial motion. This right here, that's nothing. That's just training. That motion has to have something behind it. He has to intend to strike my eye, and I put my hand up. Now he feels through the sensitivity training what he should do next. And that's called the active bridge. And if he does that active bridge and the energy goes this way and doesn't, he's just going to get hit. The energy must penetrate my core, just like we talked about in the wooden dummy. What's an important move? Number one is the first movement. If the first movement is not correct, there's no such thing as movement number two. So when he goes here, when he makes that and he attacks, that's when he finds his opening to follow up. Or when he attacks and I'm forced to put my hand up and I push away, he feels that energy I provide, and that allows him to execute a different technique. That he couldn't do anything else, but that's a base structure there that we want to do. Okay, so this one here, now, we're going to cover what we call bridge number 3. And it's called the flying bridge. And once again, I know that traditionally in Wing Chun, they don't speak it like that. That's my word for it, okay? The flying bridge is called a flying bridge because, when Dr. Alfred comes here, when he punches me, that bridge is now in flight, okay? So it's flying. It could be to my inside, it could be to my outside, and I could move back. But that bridge is now flying, and I have to deal with it in flight, okay? So this becomes an issue of timing. If he punches, I really don't want to put this hand up because I just gave him over the initiative, which is something is to be discussed from the standpoint of tactics. The initiative is when the opponent has the opportunity to attack and there's a lull on your side. So don't give him that opportunity. I don't want to offer my bridge to his thrust because now it's his turn. When you take the metronome of time, later on you can break it, but it's really not a good idea to bridge that. It gives him the initiative. If I start to move, we probably have an exchange, okay, unless I kick, okay, which is an option too. Okay, so when that bridge is in flight, I allow it to penetrate the space it desires, and I counter it with the pak. So the pak can actually be underneath the arm, and the pock can be into the rib cage like that, and that would be like the staff form. That's a strike here. And this one can also be under the armpit with a strike, and it can be under the armpit with a satsao. It could be a bilgi into the eyeball. It could be a bilgi into the throat. It could be tiger's mouth into the eyeballs. It could be tiger's mouth into the throat. It could be a munsao on the inside of the arm, and it could be a munsao on the outside of the arm. It could be changjern and kick like in the mukyeon, okay? So there's a lot of things I can reference from there, but I'm going to do the basic movement over the bridge to give you the idea. So you can reference this into your trapping basic. But this would go also into your strike control break. That's why you have a separate video for those. You don't buy the whole thing, you're missing parts, right? Okay, so when he punches here, I vacate the space and allow him to penetrate, but I insert my own attack. That requires good movement on my part. So what I do is I form intent to strike, not intent to defend. When I intend to defend, a lot of time we start exchanging punches. So when I move over here and strike, that's a flying bridge. Ideally, I don't want to allow this down. If he drops it away, I automatically strike. I don't wait for him, just hit him, and then block, okay? But the idea of being defensive is dangerous for you. So I strike right over the bridge, and he might stop me, and then, see, we get into our trapping, which probably is more realistic how any of that trapping will work. And I might even enter the other side and enter like that, and I may ghost hand him, and I may enter from the inside and enter to a break. But that's still the flying bridge. However I do that, if I enter low and go into the dummy form technique, section 3, I could do that. If I enter here and I go into section 4, I could do that. See, if I enter here, see, and I go section 4, which is moving it to the other side. And you could be in section 8, which is this here. You could do all kind of stuff from the flying bridge. But ideally, I want to learn, whichever way I move, to let that penetrate its space. And I don't need to really move forward, which a lot of people make a mistake, if he's moving to me. If he wants to hit me, he has to put his fist through my body. If he wants to stab me, he has to stab me. No need for me to move forward. You shorten your own time of flight, your own response time. So the basic is over the bridge like that. And then whatever happens after that, that's on another video. But that's what we call the flying bridge. And it can be done for the rear hand. So he could throw a straight punch, see, and that's still the flying bridge. And he could throw a straight punch, and he could throw, I would do it like this in my class. He throws 3 punches. That's dummy form section 2. I would just pass out like that, enter the flying bridge, sasao, and strike. That's section 2 in the dummy, if you recognize that. Okay, so that's the flying bridge. Okay, bridge number 4. Bridge number 4 is, we term it rear hand barrier. And this is an important way to practice, because a lot of times when you're practicing Wing Chun, you don't emphasize that training at all, maybe 0. Or rare at best. And so the rear hand barrier means that the person did not give you a bridge in front to deal with. That they're more used to slipping and parrying, so they're not going to stick a stem out in order for you to execute anything off of. And a lot of Wing Chun is based on having contact. So this is what we call a bridge. It's to get from one side to the other. Now, most of the time you start seeding that bridge in training. If you seeded the bridge, when you go into a fight and the person doesn't do that, you have difficulty. So all your skill, all your training develop you to fight other Wing Chun people really good. But we don't want to do that. So when Doc is here, the rear hand barrier can be utilized a couple of ways. If his hands are down and he's talking whatever smack to me, And I create the bridge by moving a little bit to my left, and I throw a backhand, and he stops it with his rear hand. So when he stops it with his rear hand, a lot of times, see, I can enter and execute that backhand or that satsao, or even sometimes the bill will follow, and I monitor this hand here. However, that's kind of dangerous to try to execute. You should just follow up on the hit. In other words, if his rear hand is there, I just follow right away with the hit. So I drive through that, and that's where I get to the hitting. So I'm not really looking for this in order to go to here and to do that, or looking for this in order to go to here, 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 and enter some trapping. The goal has to remain to hit the opponent. Hit, 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 hit. Anything that impedes that goal, you clear with a pak or a lop or a hun or whatever technique that's going to get you to where you want to be. So when I throw that punch and he makes that rear hand barrier, I might cut through it so that I can throw this punch. Or I might strike right through it. Or in some cases, I lop his hand across my body, allows me to enter. And in some cases, see, if I enter in, I have to monitor this hand. And this is struck, and then the elbow goes, and I get into some close quarter takedown stuff. But if I do that, sometimes I allow sound. See, that will allow me to strike out of this. So on the rear hand barrier, see, I have to really monitor this hand. Now that's one way to do it, and that doesn't necessarily mean that's the only way to do it. We almost always practice it like this. When he punches me, particularly if it's a low, I move and then I back fist. Now, the first barrier I have come to is that, and that will get me to my lapsa guachoi. And or my first barrier is that, and that gets me to my subsao satsao. Or my first barrier is that, and that gets me to my jingjern. Or my first barrier is that, so that gets me to my satsao elbow and strike. And sometimes, see, my first barrier gets me into that position so I can sweep, okay? I don't know what's going to happen until I feel his. That's why we do sensitivity training, which is for another video. But when he punches me like that, see, and that's my first barrier. This one was not a barrier, so I move it so that I can strike. I want to make sure I don't allow this hand to come back because this gives him the initiative. So this is what we call, in Wing Chun, the hand doesn't retreat. If you see what's happening, I'm turning my body, but my hand, my elbow is immovable. And that allows me to unify his two hands and control them both and strike and strike and strike. Okay, so I don't really go like this and let that hand swing in the breeze. I really want to make sure that I join them. Now you see where the arm break is really quick? That's what we call control. And then break, I do a violent elevator ride, which is in bilji form. We'll get to that, okay? But anytime he throws that punch, see, whether it's high or low, see, that could get me the rear hand barrier. But a flying bridge is that because it's instant. A rear hand barrier is more, it has more of a 1-2 sound. And you should practice that because a lot of times people say, well, how do you fight a boxer? That's how. When he punches, I don't even have to deal with that. See, then he punches, I might enter on his rear hand. Because why? Because he has to stop this. If he throws that punch and doesn't stop this, that hits him, and I just follow up on him. But because he has to stop it, it's there. Now, what do? I want to move him out to punching range and drive him, or I want to try to make him stop fighting by putting him in a joint lock. Or do I want to end it quickly? Perhaps he's armed with a knife. I can end it quickly. So this technique will work whether he's armed or not. That's important. All of them should be. Okay, so that's what we call the rear hand barrier. It's a 1-2 sound. Okay? It's a 1-2 and then follow-up sound. Whereas the flying bridge is a 1 sound. Okay? It's really hard to see. There's not a big difference. But when I do that and that, see, the technique, a lot of time will draw out a different response from the opponent. Whereas this here is a lot more different, see, because his movement is tight. The other one is more loose and sloppy, like a real person. You know, as long as you're fighting Wing Chun people, don't worry about this. But if you walk out the door, you kind of need to have the understanding of the rear hand barrier. Okay, so the next section we call section 5 is the capture the bridge. And what this means is if we have any doubt, we just attack. When a person signals me that they want to fight, it's my belief that it's go time at that moment. Don't ask question, are you going to punch me? If he put his hands up like this, and I think he probably wants to punch me. I just assume that. So at that moment, that's when everything is going to start. I'm not going to wait for him to throw a punch or even gesture. That's what 5 bridge is. I'm not telling you to go around punching people out, but if he puts his hands up, see, I don't want you to do this. Have your hands here. He has his hands there, and then I practice the technique. No, because you need a trigger. So when he puts his hands up, I automatically go here and see where the elbow is, see where the satsa is, see where the strike is. And then everything, if he punches, whatever's going to proceed from there, that's not what we're talking about here. We're just talking about the actual bridge itself. So the minute he puts his hands up, I shock him, just like the wooden dummy. I hit both sides of the dummy, so I strike the core. I strike the core, and when he resists, I pull him into Nao Sao. Nao Sao to Ding Jarn, to Chum Jarn, to Yup Jarn. That's in Bilji form, the end. A lot of people say, there's no this. It's there. But if you did the form, you would already know that. Okay, so, but when I hit him, when he puts his hand up, that's Nao Sao, and that's the Ding Jarn, and that's Chum Jarn, and that's Chang Jarn, and that's Sa Sao and Bilji. Whatever you want to add flavor-wise into the striking there, you know, eye gouge or whatever, or just punch because you don't want to hurt him too bad, then you could do that too. So I enter in on my right hand, and I enter in on my left hand. That doesn't matter, it could still be that. That's what we call the Nao Sao, or outside entry. And as soon as he puts his hands up, I just collapse on him. Just gonna hit him. I don't give him any time. This is weak when he puts his hands like that. So I attack it and use that structure against him. Structurally, that's the weakest point in his motion. If his hands are a little bit tighter in, what I do is shock that, and I cross it and strike him there. So the strike can be right there. Or how you want to do this, you can too. I'm not going to do it, but you can. So when he goes like that, see, his hands are tighter in. The minute he puts them up, see, I get control of him. He really gave me control of him. This will not allow him to strike down, and so I can strike here. And so a lot of time I elbow shots, I'll strike to finish that job. But he's going to probably be moving as soon as I start hitting his vitals, right? Okay, so when it's kind of tight, I just shock it together, and that inserts, and that could go like that. And it depends on what lead he is in, of what hand inserts, right? Or if he's not in the lead. If he's not in any lead, you're likely to hit his 2 hands together. Then just shift it to one side and decide which side you want to strike from. So if I hit his 2 hands together, that can hurt too. But that will allow me entry to striking from that point. Okay, another way is when he puts his hands up, immediately I enter down the middle. I pull him into the strike, and I strike. And I could do that on the left and right side. See, I could strike here, and I could strike here, and I could just out. See that? He might strike me with that other hand on any angle, but that's why we have the gates. That's where the gates really come into play, not here. I'm not going to try to figure out which way he's going to punch. Doesn't matter to me at that point. But when he puts his hand up, I might enter like that. See, so my instructor in Asano calls this a split entry. See, okay, and this is just a Jutsao, and that's a straight punch. I can see that punch could punch at any minute, but that's computed in my path. If he strikes right now, see, it's still computed in my path. If he strikes when I struck here, I will compute that in my path. If he strikes after I struck, I will compute that in my path. It's already computed. That's why you have to do your forms. So that training is already inside your body. So I could do that to my left and I could do that to my right. See that? So that's what we term a split entry. It's like a flying bridge, but it's not, because why? I'm capturing his bridge. His bridge is just up. So as soon as he goes up, I capture it and hit him, see? He might punch, there's perfect tanda, and change it. He might put his hand up, see, and I go outside the bridge. So I just go like that, see, because my position, I slip, and that, again, looks like a flying bridge, but his bridge is not in flight. See where the elbow and the strike are. So that's me going outside his right arm, and I might go outside his left arm, okay, to strike. So I could go inside it on either side, and I could go outside it on either side, and I could go on the outside of both, okay, but I'm not sure I want to go to the inside of both, because you're going to get wiped out, okay? That's kamikaze attack. Okay, another thing I could do is trap 1-2 and hit him. And that, if you have the trapping video, we would call that ghost hand, or spirit hand, or Weissau. The minute he put his hand up, I just take both hands. And I might do that if I'm drawing a weapon, see, that way I can cut him. Or if I'm drawing a weapon over here, see, then I can draw that weapon while taking care of his business. And I should do that going to my right, and I should do that going to my left. And you should do it depending on how he stands. Make him stand 5 or 6 different ways. Square, right side forward, left side forward, whatever stance you want to make them stand in. And practice capturing the bridge. Because again, when he puts his hand up, that's the weakest point in his. If he puts his 2 hands in really tight like that, like some boxers do, perfect to split down the middle. But see, this isn't the emphasis. It has to be that strike or that strike. At the very least, that should draw a reaction from him and allow me to come out of that in some form of striking or controlling or breaking, which is another video. Okay, but anytime that hand is up, I take it. Anytime that hand is up, I take it. Anytime the hand is up, I take it. Anytime the hand is up, I take it. If he stops my hit, I take it. If he stops my hit, I take it. That's all everything you do from your trapping video should be done from every one of those positions, essentially. You should find yourself there at some point. Just like if you're doing Chisao, you'll find yourself at every one of those positions. And just about everything you do in Wing Chun is leading you somewhere.